My own personal venture into plant-based eating and plant-based food has started with the birth of our daughter in 2008. Our pediatrician back then, we lived in Los Angeles at the time, highly recommended a plant-based diet for her, which I thought back then was a little extreme, to be honest. I don't know, anybody else here that thinks like that's a little extreme? Okay, I was with you. I thought that was not what I had envisioned, even though I was mostly vegetarian at the time, but I grew up in Germany originally, and I certainly grew up with all the foods that are eaten in Germany a lot. And when Franca was very little, she was what you would call a colicky baby, and she was crying a lot, and I would have done anything for her to get better. And he recommended to change my eating habits, and particularly stop consuming dairy products. And for us personally, it has helped so much, because not only did she stop crying, I also felt better for the first time in my life. I didn't know that I felt bad necessarily, but I didn't know that I could feel better. And so I really was impressed with the changes that I saw in myself and our daughter. 2008, as some of you remember, was also the year of the financial crisis. And I was working in advertising beforehand, and I decided to do a career change, and I started looking into nutrition because it was something that has always interested me, and at the same time I just wanted to know more about it for my family, especially after seeing what had happened very early on in Franca's childhood. And so I first became a health counselor in New York City. And the first lecture that I heard was by Professor T. Colin Campbell, who heads up the nutrition department at Cornell University. And I can truly say that it changed my life, and it changed the life of my family. Because I have also cancer in my family history. My mother died of cancer, and it's a hereditary cancer that I certainly didn't want to have to live through myself, or maybe not survive. And I didn't want to give it to my child either. And so it really was life-changing for me to hear about the studies that he had done for a long time, where they identified an on and off switch for cancer growth, which is animal protein. And I thought back then, like, oh my God, this has to be on the front of every newspaper. It has to be in every TV program, because aren't we all looking for the cure for cancer? And so when I finished my studies at that school in New York, I signed on to be in one of the first classes that he did at Cornell University, and got certified in plant-based nutrition specifically, because I wanted to learn more about it. I also then went on to study with Dr. Neil Barnard, who maybe some of you might know. And I started teaching for him in hospitals, in social clubs, like really anywhere where they would have me, and teach about cancer prevention and diabetes reversal, and really got to know him really well, and help implement it in schools as well, and help parents like you that are concerned perhaps about the nutrition aspects of a plant-based diet to better understand what we can do and what plant-based eating means. Funny enough, when I was teaching these classes, like some of them, like I said, were in like poorer neighborhoods of Los Angeles and hospitals, and these classes were highly subsidized. At the same time, I was teaching the same classes in high-end social clubs, and everybody really has the same questions. That's what really stood out to me. It doesn't matter who you are, like we all have the same questions. We all want our children to be healthy. We want, to be healthy ourselves. And it's always the same questions that come up. And instead of like really talking for a really long time here, I'd like to maybe get into some of the questions that you might have as well, because I think that, for so many reasons, not just environmental or health, but there's really a lot of reasons why we should embrace a plant-based diet. And it's really, in the end, it's really easy. It's not a complicated thing. When we think about it, like when somebody is sick, like how many times does the doctor say you really need to eat more meat and dairy? It doesn't really happen. We know that a diet that is rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes is really a good diet. If we look worldwide to something that's called the blue zones. Has anybody heard of the blue zones here? Yeah. Okay. What they have in common is that they eat the most legumes and fruits and vegetables. And some of the highest lived people on the planet are actually in California, because they're living, and that's interesting because it's only in one part of California, in Loma Linda, where they, because of religious reasons, are already not eating meat, they're not drinking alcohol, they have a really healthy lifestyle, and they live really long and healthy lives. And so when we look at these places across the world, what all these people have in common, while they might not be like completely plant-based, but the majority of their calories come from plant foods. And plants have phytonutrients, which are only found in plants. And those are the benefits of eating plants and fighting disease and being healthy, because we need those nutrients. And they only come in plants, like I said. So the more plant foods you eat, the better it is. And if you, especially in a place of learning like a school, if we can teach our children that that's important for their own health and also for the environment on top of it, then I think that's a great start. And we would do our children a disservice by not talking about that. So, is there any question right away that anybody has, or any concern about a plant-based diet?
I think the only question that I would ask, your journey started very early when your child was a baby, so you made all of the decisions for your child. Mm-hmm. My child is 16, and so if she becomes interested, what are the kind of the potential pitfalls, or what would one advise a 16-year-old whose parents may not know as much as they know? Mm-hmm. What would you advise parents to watch out for, or mm-hmm. to look at if their child decides that they want to embark then mm-hmm. on a plant-based diet? That's
a great question. I think I'd like to bring it back down to my own daughter and how I started, or when I talked to really young children, to make it easy. We always talked about how important it is, because there's really 4 food groups that you should eat as a really healthful vegan, right? I mean, we all know I could eat French fries and chips and drink Coke and beer or something, and I would be vegan technically, but I wouldn't be healthy. So when we eat, what we should be eating is fruits, vegetables, whole grains, I mean grains, but they should really be whole grains, and legumes, beans. So those are the 4 things. Since a hand has 5 fingers, I always added drink water, not Coca-Cola, not juice or anything, even though juice can be fine too, but water is really essential for good health. So I would always go back and talk with her about it too, and be like, well, did you eat this? When she would ask again, like, oh, can I have some crackers? And I would be like, okay, well, let's think about this. What did you eat today? And then she'd be like, oh, bread and rice and pasta and crackers. And like, there's a couple things missing. So that's something to look out for, that your child has, to get a balanced diet, so to say. It should include fruits, it should include vegetables, it should include some type of grain, preferably whole grain if possible. And beans are really great and really health promoting, and that can come in many different ways. It could come, in forms of hummus, it could be in a chili, it could be in burritos. I mean, there's different ways. It could be edamame. There's really legumes in pretty much any cuisine. And I would make sure that they eat enough, because it's not enough to just leave off animal protein and then not replace it, because those foods tend to have a lot of calories because of the high fat content. So if all of a sudden you're left with, the same looking amount of food, it has a lot less calories. And so, there shouldn't be any worry about them then eating too much. So that's, I think, what I would look out for.
Thank you.
Are you recommending they do any supplementation on the vegan diet, especially for the teenage girls?
Mm-hmm. I think that that's another really good question. There's always the question about, well, how healthy can a diet be if you need to supplement it, right? But I think we have to think about that the vitamin industry did not start because of vegans. They started because of deficiency in all areas, and specifically because animal foods don't have a lot of the nutrients that we need. what I learned later in, like, even after I became a health coach, like, that it was just really put down that simply, is that all nutrients that we require as human beings for growth in any stage of our life are found in plants or in the ground in forms of minerals, right? Because, I mean, who hasn't heard that we need to have dairy for calcium or something like that? But when you think about it, like, a cow can't make calcium. Calcium is a mineral and it comes from the ground. So especially today, like, the feed for cattle is supplemented with calcium so that we can then get the calcium that they supplemented. So in the end, we could supplement it ourselves, or we could eat things that come from the ground, like beans and greens, for example, are a great source of calcium. That said, there still can be deficiencies, even if you eat an all plant-based diet. One of the things that people talk about is B12, which actually is a bacteria and not a vitamin, so to say. And it originates in the ground. And so because animals eat, or tended to eat, more things that come directly from the ground without washing them, they would ingest this bacteria and it would then flourish in their gut. And if we eat animal products, we can benefit from that B12 and have it as well. We tend to wash our carrots now and our salads and things like that. Also, the ground has changed. It's not maybe as nutritious anymore as it used to be. So supplementing with B12 is always a good idea. That's the first thing I would say. Then living in a climate like here in Northern Europe, vitamin D is also a good idea because the sun is so much lower here, and the rays that we get from the sun, you know, are best for us at a certain time. That might not be the time when we're outside. And so vitamin D, I would think, is a good idea as well. And then in the, you know, there is certain, and I can make a recommendation for that too. I don't have it on top of my head right now, but there's a multivitamin that is specifically for vegans on top of it that has all the nutrients that you could look for. And if you have, you know, a fear that your child might not get enough at certain times, then supplementing here and there is fine. In general, though, I would say that just supplementing because of fear that you're not getting enough is not always a good idea, because supplementation is not natural in a way. Like, you get nutrients in different compositions and sometimes way higher, and there are side effects with certain vitamins. And that's something I learned through Cornell University as well, that you can overdose on certain vitamins, and that's not a good idea. So if there are certain reasons why you think you need supplementations, you can always talk to a doctor about it, or you can, you know, skip days and do every other day. Vitamin B12 is not toxic. Like, if you have too much, you will just excrete it and it's not a big deal. So that's why I always recommend that one. And then it's a specific case where you should look into what your real needs are. And that can vary person by person. Mm-hmm.
What about fish oils? Mm-hmm. So oils in the diet.
Thank you. Yes, another one. I didn't mention the omega-3 fatty acids. Yeah. That's similar to calcium. It's an essential nutrient, omega-3 fatty acids, and no animal can make them. So the fish can't make it either. So same with the cow that ate, you know, the grass that came from the ground and gets calcium from the ground as a mineral. Fatty acids originate in greens. So the fish, and it's interesting too, no matter where I was teaching the classes, for example, for Dr. Barnard, when I would ask what's a good source of omega-3 fatty acids, most people would say fish. And then I would say, which fish? And people would say
salmon or mackerel.
Salmon, exactly. Yeah. And it's not even true. There's other fish that have more, but that has been promoted by the industry as one of the big reasons why we should consume more salmon. Mm-hmm. And yes, why salmon has omega-3 fatty acids, it also has a lot of saturated fat that is not good for us. So if the original source of omega-3 fatty acids is greens, we can also eat our greens. The salmon gets it from algae. We can get omega-3 fatty acids, believe it or not, even from iceberg lettuce. Like, I'm not saying that's the most nutritious way of getting it. A much better way would be flaxseed, for example. It's very high in omega-3 fatty acids. But again, it originates in plants. And so fish oil comes again with a lot of other things that you know, you might not want. For example, extra vitamins like vitamin E and A to keep it shelf stable. And that can lead to other problems as well. So I would say flax seeds is much better for that. Yes?
So what about iron? My daughter struggled with anemia for the past 2 years.
Beans and greens is like the plant-based answer to that.
You get somebody to start eating beans.
Well, there's different ways. It's really, I think sometimes we just kind of are narrow-minded when it comes to where do those foods come from, because there's always so many different ways that you can eat a specific food. Like I said, with beans too, there is white beans, there is black beans, there is pinto beans, there is chickpeas. You can eat it in form of a spread on a sandwich that they might like. You can cook them, you can eat a chili, you can eat different ethnic foods, especially in an international school. I think it's such an opportunity to have different dishes, that people might not be used to. Growing up in Germany, I didn't get to eat a lot of tofu, for example. And like the kids that I knew didn't eat tofu. But in other countries, that's totally normal because the parents eat it, so they eat it too, the kids. And so I think it's really good to experiment. And again, tofu, also a bean, made from soybeans. So, and it comes with all the benefits of a bean, whatever else people might think about soy. And nobody needs to eat soy to be healthy, but I'm just saying it's a bean also. You can eat edamame, like different things. But so for iron, yeah, I would say it's, we get smaller quantities of iron from plant foods, but that's also a really good thing because you don't want too much iron because that is not good for the brain, for example. And in animal foods, it's very high in iron, and people that have too much iron usually get told that they should reduce the amount of meat, for example, that they consume to not have too much iron. So iron is in plant foods. It is available in certain cases, and I don't know, the medical history of your child, but it might be worth it to talk to a doctor as well. Again, in general, I'm not for supplementation. I'm more for getting it naturally and keeping the iron, and that also has to do with what else we eat. You can increase iron intake with vitamin C if you eat vitamin C at the same time. That could be a little bit of lemon juice on your kale or your greens, but that can be helpful, yes.
In 2011, my daughter got seriously ill. We spent 2 weeks at the hospital as a result of nephritis she had, and her blood count was at minimum. I mean, it was a very, very scary situation, and I worked with one of the top hematologists in the country, and she said, while I'm not promoting to eat red meat in generally, in this particular case, your daughter needs to get a lot of red meat and for some time, because in a small piece you get much more than you would get eating beans or so. I mean, she wouldn't, I mean, she had very low appetite anyway, so and for a while we had to feed her with red meat, which I'm not very fond of, but I had to. So in case of a life-threatening situation like that, what would a vegan do?
I think, and I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. That's always scary. Yeah. I would say in general though, and I don't know the complete medical history, in general, like if you ask people like, who is affected by heart disease, for example, right? Are you or is anybody that you know affected by heart disease? Most people here, right, would know somebody. Am I right? Okay. Same with cancer. Same with diabetes. Like we all have somebody in our family or we know somebody. So these are the #1 diseases that we're dying from. And these diseases are all nutritionally connected. And we could do a lot to avoid those diseases. That doesn't mean that obviously that was very scary for you and your family.
Yeah, and it was a very particular situation,
Exactly.
For a time period, she had to eat a lot of red meat.
Exactly.
Just to catch up,
Yes, I totally hear you. And my point is just that that is a very specific case.
Yeah.
In general, our whole world population in the Western world has the opposite. We're eating too much meat. So, in that case, if that is life-saving for your child, then, and the doctors around you suggest that, then I would say that you should go for that. I think that most people here and in general in the Western world don't have that problem. And for them, it would be a better way to avoid all these other diseases that we seriously are affected by, even early in childhood. And so that's why I think teaching children about the benefits of plant-based eating is really important, especially in a school. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to dismiss. And I think the question is too, like, you know, one of the more jokey questions you get asked as a vegan is like, well, if you would be on an island and there's only one pig with you, like, would you eat the pig? And it's like, okay, that's true, and you might think about that. That's the personal choice, and at that point, if you would eat that pig or not. That's not even the question. But the question is, we're not on that island. We have so much more foods available around us that are better for all of us, and that's what we should be focusing on. And you know, if there are certain situations where you have to eat animal protein because the doctors around you recommend that as being the best option, then I'm not going to argue with that. That is not my concern. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I want your child to be healthy, but it's one case versus, you know, the majority of the other cases. Because really, like, you know, one of the other concerns, for example, that comes up with a plant-based diet is protein deficiency, right? Like, have you heard that? That, you know, you're not sure if you can get enough protein on a vegan diet. And then, again, when you ask in a room full of people if they know somebody with family history or personally with all these diseases that we're dying from, we all know about, you know, the cancer wards in hospitals. We know, you know, specific heart hospitals, heart health, whatever. But if you ask people, like, how many they know that are affected by kwashiorkor, for example, like, anybody here? Kwashiorkor? It's a disease, and it's protein deficiency. And it's obviously not that big of a problem that we make it out to be, because we would have, you know, if that would be such a big thing, we would have hospitals dedicated to this disease. If people are really protein deficient, you see it, and they have a higher deficiency, and that is actually in calories. It's almost impossible to be protein deficient if you eat enough calories in the day. Like, no matter what you're eating, because protein is really in everything. Again, like, everything we need comes from plants. Protein comes from plants. The animals ate it first, and that's why you get all the amino acids together. We can eat it in separate stages. We can eat some protein that is found in vegetables, some in whole grains, some in legumes, and some even in fruit. And so that's why you get everything you need on a plant-based diet.
You can talk about the complementary proteins, this way of an education tool for the kids in order to help them eat different things. Because the amino acids in certain groups are only in that group. So when you get all of them together, then it makes the complete protein. Then you can encourage them to eat different things together.
Right.
So
you can. That's why I was talking about the handy hand, where you talk about fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, and drink water. To put it on that level, there's no need to eat them all together at the same time, because your body, that's why maybe we felt so full. If you think back about holiday meals, when you ate a lot and then afterwards you're like, oh my God, I'm so full. That's because your body really needs time to digest and take everything apart again, because obviously even in proteins, not every protein does the same thing, right? Like, growing muscle is different than growing hair or fingernails. So there's different proteins that do different things and different amino acids that do different things, and the body is taking them all apart and sending them to where you need them. And that is actually much easier on a plant-based diet, because you already get them in different sections, and then the body can kind of disperse them and use them wherever it's needed. But yeah, that's very true. There's, you know, different foods that complement each other, and then you have all the amino acids you need. Yeah. Any other questions about that? Yes.
What resource would you recommend for, I don't know, like as a suggestion for a diet, for concrete recipes, like balanced throughout the week? Because I'm personally struggling. I've noticed that I am vegetarian throughout the day, but I struggle with finding recipes for breakfast, because it's always omelets, and also I have a small child. It's always, you know, like, milk, protein, and stuff like that. It's also traditional. Coming from the north, it's a traditional diet, and I cannot replace this 7 recipes with anything else. During the day, it's not a problem. Lunch, dinner, everything is easy. So maybe there is like the resource you would recommend, or a book, or
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
a complete thing with all the proteins coming together in the best combination, so that we don't have to think about it.
That's a great idea. Yeah, it's actually, you bring up a good point, because the thing is, when you change your eating habits or you're looking for replacements, in the end it's really not that hard, because I mean, vegan food is already the basis of everything that we should be eating anyways, and it's not a different food. And when we change, all we have to do mostly is replace 7 or so dishes, between 7 and 10 dishes. And when you think about it, we're not eating that adventurously anyways. Most of us eat kind of the same thing all the time, and we repeat what we like. And once you find replacements for the pasta dish that you really like, or you realize that it has been vegan all along or plant-based, and that you can, you know, replace it with different items, the easier it gets, because you really need those 7 dishes. So when I was teaching for the Physicians Committee, they have a website. They're called the Physicians Committee. It used to be pcrm.org, and there's a lot of free resources. There's actually resources for schools to implement healthier school lunch options. There's also what is called a vegan kickstart, where you get recipe support for a whole month, where they will send you shopping lists, and they will make you, you know, give you ideas for what you could eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's all free. You could just, even if you're not planning on trying out a whole veganuary, you could sign up for the Kickstart. It's called Vegan Kickstart. I think it's also another website of theirs. And just look, and just, you know, take a look at what they offer for breakfast. I know there's pancakes, I know there's scrambles, I know there's, like, you know, more Mexican type dishes that are heartier for breakfast. There's also overnight oats, and, you know, all sorts of different things for different times of the year as well. So I think that's a great place to start, and especially those recipes are super healthy. Like, they're really good, and I've used them a lot in my classes, and I think that's a really good start. And also just, you know, I don't know all the cookbook authors in Germany. I know that Nico Rittenau, is anybody familiar with him here? Okay, well, he's really he's a best-selling author in Germany. He looks a lot into the health benefits of things. He has also been helping developing that supplement I was talking about for vegans specifically. And he has then made that available to all the pharmaceutical companies, so that there's no, you know, like no patent on one thing, or only one company can have this kind of, you know, composition of nutrients that would be best in a supplement. So there's a bunch of different companies that are offering this. So he would be a good one here in Germany if you are speaking German and you want to read his books or his blogs or follow him on Instagram. Then, you know, I think every country really has a couple of people at the forefront now that are, you know, cooking. There's a lot of information online too. If you are on Instagram and you type in, I don't know, hashtag vegan, or vegan lunch ideas, or vegan breakfast ideas, there'll be so much that comes up, and you quickly find people that have a big following, that have cookbooks. And, you know, in the end, it comes down to flavor. We have to like the food we eat, right? It's a very personal thing. Like, nobody's going to stick with this if it doesn't taste good. So we have to find things that we personally like. But I would say PCRM is a good start to find ideas, especially because they do this Kickstart where they give you ideas daily and help you with the shopping list and so forth. And then it's about finding your own personal chefs that you like. Yes?
First of all, thank you for the presentation, for your informative and important presentation. And will there be also a talking presentation for the students about?
We can certainly do that. I'm happy to answer students' questions as well. I think that's up to the school or to you guys to ask for that, if that's important, if the kids would like more information. That is, again, it's a really good point, because we are in a school, right? And I think all our kids know how to eat pizza and chicken nuggets and whatever. And really, like, that's what is making them sick. And I just recently read a study again that was just so sad to me, and that is that in the US, at least, I can mostly speak for the US, but, you know, the Western world is not that far behind the US. 100% of 10-year-olds that are eating a Western diet have already the beginning of heart disease in their arteries. And since that's our #1 killer, I feel like we need to tell them, and we need to do something about that, because we can. And yes, some kids might be concerned, or some parents might be concerned that if we're changing the school menu, will they eat? I would say, first of all, I'm sure that the school would do everything they can to make it as tasty as possible. And there's already so many meals that are tasty that kids like pasta, right? I mean, most kids like pasta, I think. They also might like rice. They might like tortillas, maybe. You know, there's different things kids already like, and we can improve on that. And we should explain to them too, because studies have shown if you explain to kids, or if they're part of creating meals, they're much more likely to try them. Also, if they see other people eating them. I mean, when kids are little, they really copy everything we do, right? Even if it's like scrubbing the toilet, they will pretend they scrub the toilet too, or they would want to do it if they see us do it. And it's the same for eating. If they see us eat vegetables, they will eat vegetables. If they see their friends eat vegetables, they will eventually eat them too. If they see their teachers eating vegetables, you know, that's all. It might not happen right away. Like, God, I wish. Like, I have a vegan child, and I know what the battle is like to make them eat certain foods. Like, she would not eat, I don't know, in the beginning broccoli, for example. Then she would only eat the stems. Then she would only eat the tickly parts on top and not the stems. Then she would only eat it baked for a while. Then she would only eat it raw with a peanut butter dip. Then she would only eat it sauteed. Then I had to blend it up in something, in like a soup. But there's always different ways that we can, you know, make a food exciting and try it. They have even found out, for example, in schools, if you offer the chocolate bar versus the broccoli, if the broccoli has an Elmo sticker on it for younger kids, like all of a sudden half of them choose the broccoli because they like that. There's different ways how we can influence our children and then at the same time teach them about it, because they will be listening. They might not do everything right away, but wouldn't it be great if at least in 10 years from now they can look back and be like, you know what, they talked about that in my school, I remember that. Or now there's even more research out there. I mean, I think we've all seen how in the last 10 years, I would say in particular, the acceptance of a vegan diet has become so much higher and so much more popular and just acknowledged as something that is not just a fad that is going to go away at some point, but big companies are changing, and they're not changing because they want to appease some fad. They know that it's not going to go away. There's meat companies now that sell more vegan faux meat products here than the regular thing, and that's because we are changing and we know better and we are doing better. And those products can be very helpful in the beginning, by the way, too. That doesn't mean they're the healthiest products, but they can help transition away when you don't know in the beginning what should go on my plate, when I'm used to looking at a steak or a piece of chicken or, you know, something that I put on my bread. So I think it's a great idea to educate the kids about it and maybe address questions that they have, because, you know, for me personally, I never thought that much about my own personal health until I had a child. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, I don't know, like how I'm responsible for this human being. Like, how do I make sure that she's getting the best, that she's getting all the omega-3 fatty acids? I went through all the same things. And, you know, but it would be so much better to have them realize that in childhood and develop a sensitivity for their own body and realize how they feel.
When I go to the grocery store, I always look at these meat replacement products. And to be honest, I'm against eating packaged goods as much as possible. You know, I always cook raw food from raw vegetables, whatever. But I would like to try these things. But when a product is packaged, that means there are a lot of preservatives, additional chemicals, etc., to extend the shelf life of the product. When we are looking at a meat replacement product, what should we be aware of in terms of these additives, etc.? Can you give us an idea, please? Because I don't want to buy the wrong things, just not in order not to eat meat.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, again, I would bring it way down, and for a second just think about what processed foods are or what that means. When we buy for example, you brought up like the fake meat, right?
Yeah.
That you buy in a package. If you buy a steak in a package, that is highly processed as well, or chicken breast. It doesn't
I
come.
never buy steak in a package.
Okay, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, you know, but most people do. Like, I applaud you for cooking everything super fresh, but wherever you get your meat from, it has to been processed, and it has to been washed, and it has to, a lot of times, you know, just to be cleaned from the facility where it was going through to get to your plate in the end, or your kitchen. So there's obviously there's different levels of processing. I totally hear you. Like every product, even a vegetable soup, has been processed and has been, you know, has potentially have additives added to it to make it shelf stable and so forth. That's unfortunately part of our industrialized life, that we make it easier and we buy different things that are processed. Like even blueberries are processed in a way because they have to been picked and, you know, organized and like put in a little package. And the question is always that I ask myself, like, first of all, can I be healthier? Yes, I think like many of us can be healthier, right? We all mostly know the answer too. It's either drink more water or eat more fresh fruit or do this or do that. You can always be healthier. When you choose a fake meat, as you call it, over animal meat, that does not necessarily mean that it's healthier, even though in certain ways it will be, certainly. But is it harmful? And I think if you replace animal foods with the vegan alternative, no matter how processed they are, for the most part, while they might not be health promoting, it's not like eating fresh fruit or beans or vegetables. They're also not harmful in the same sense that animal products can be harmful, because we know the relation of cholesterol to you know, to our health and to heart disease and cancer and so forth. Like I was saying in the beginning, the on and off switch for cancer growth is animal protein. It's not fake meat. So there's a level where can you be healthier? Absolutely. Like, do we need to eat these fake meat products? No, we don't. Like, that's not part really of a healthful vegan diet. But can you eat them? Yes. Like, it's, you know, same as we can eat chips. Like, it's not, you know, it's not benefiting us to eat chips, but it's also not making us drop dead tomorrow. I'm not recommending a diet of chips. But I'm just saying, like, you're right, and that's something that I hear a lot and that people are talking a lot about, like, well, how natural can it be and how good can it be when it's in a package and has like these ingredients? You know, in general, like, to maybe be more helpful to your question, I would always look for a short ingredient list. You can also look for organic ingredients. That's also like another hint that a product is better than others, for sure. You know, you can also find out how to make certain things in fake meats yourself. Like, I'm a huge fan of seitan, for example. Does anybody know what that is or not know what it is? Should I explain what it is? Okay, seitan is made from wheat gluten. It's I don't know if you know that. I have a store in Königstein where I make vegan products myself. It's like a deli and a restaurant, and you can eat and try things, and you can buy things for the home. It's called Deerbrook Kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everything's delicious. And just
thank you. Thank you. So, anyways, you can make.
He's always going there.
Oh,
And he's
nice! I love that.
He's a regular.
Awesome! I love that. Very nice. But Deerbrook Kitchen is the name of my place. So, anyways, I'm making a lot of my own like cheese replacements and meats and things like that. And seitan is one of them. I personally am a big seitan fan. That's because I don't have a gluten intolerance. If you are celiac or something like that, you should not eat in my place, because I have, you know, bread everywhere. I have gluten everywhere. I use organic gluten, which I think is processed much better by the body, and like so many people have less of a reaction to wheat that usually have a problem with wheat. And seitan, just to come back to that real quick, was developed, so one says, by Tibetan monks that probably got tired of just eating tofu. And I don't know how they discovered this, but there's all these funny discoveries in vegan food, by the way. For example, that sauerkraut and truffle blended together tastes a lot like cheese. But, you know, I don't know who finds these things out, but it's funny. So anyways, so these Tibetan monks were very adventurous, and they added water to just flour. and they realized it becomes doughy, and if you keep washing it underwater, you wash away all the starch, and what you're left with is pure protein, so to say. There's no fat in it. It's very, very high in protein, and the texture, when you then simmer it, they traditionally simmered it in a broth of like ginger and maybe a little tamari or soy sauce or something like that. You can really in the end add all the spices that you like. You could add lemon and rosemary to like make it more Mediterranean tasting, whatever. You simmer this for about 40 minutes or an hour, and then you have a base product just like tofu, and you can slice it, you can then bread it, you can fry it. Since it has no fat, who minds a little frying, and we all like what that does to food when it gets a little crispy, and you can greatly improve the flavor. I make salamis out of it, for example, that I cook and then smoke in an oven, and just to replace kind of what I liked when I was little and I was eating those things, and it has kind of a similar mouthfeel and a similar, you know, texture, and it smells good to me. You know, so it's very versatile. So you can also make these things at home, and really making seitan is not hard. Like I said, you have dough, you put a liquid on it, you mix it by hand, and then you put it in water and you simmer it. There's your meat replacement. So you could be all out and just cook from scratch, but again, like those replacements are not bad either, especially in the beginning when you don't know how to replace something, and you can just try it out. And please keep trying. Some of them are horrible. And if you think like, oh my God, that's what it's like to eat plant-based, it doesn't have to be that way. And I hope the school will find different, you know, meat replacements or things to try out, like a burger or, you know, different things that kids are already liking, where they see, you know, if we explain to them on top of it, and I think Catherine is gonna do that by saying, look, you could eat this burger or this burger, and this one is detrimental for your health and for the environment and for the animals, and then this one tastes almost the same. You know, maybe it's worth trying, and after trying it a couple times, maybe you even like it. But I think we just have to make them aware that that choice exists, and, you know, teach them a little bit about nutrition and the impact that our food choices have, because it makes a huge difference.